Hey everybody, this is Bob Crossen, Senior Managing Editor for Water and Waste Digest, and I'm here with Ed Quilty. He is the CEO of Aquatic Informatics. We're going to talk a little bit about smart water. So Ed, welcome to the call.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah. So let's start with the highest level that we can talk about smart water, which is let's define what we're talking about here. Can you give me what you would define smart water as?
Yeah, so Aquatic Informatics is a software company, so my perspective is certainly focused on the digital side. So really, I look at it as utilities, in particular, using digital tech to optimize operations and capital planning. So, we've seen a higher adoption of instrumentation and software, and now even data science in the last few years for more insight and greater resiliency. Yeah, so it'd be, examples would be using SCADA systems, GIS, hydraulic models, and adding sensors into your network, both drinking water and on the distribution and on the collection side, on the wastewater side.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'm always reminded of is that just having AMR or AMI doesn't make your system smart. You got to use that
That's
data
right. Yeah.
somehow, right?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. It's data. Less than 1% of data is used. Is sort of more of a global statistics, and in the water industry, I think it's probably much less than that. So, as you said, you can have sensors out there. It doesn't mean you're actually getting a lot of insight
Yeah,
unless you're
yeah.
using.
Well, yeah, and then you think about historic data too, and how a lot of utilities probably just have boxes of reams of paper that are just in a closet somewhere. I'm sure that that's also valuable, but it's hard to translate that over to this digital framework we're in now.
Yeah, that's exactly it. And that data, if you can digitize it and bring it, to light of day, it's really valuable as we're starting to look at, using data science, combining different data sets. That historic stuff really helps you train the models. So, yeah, we work with agencies, on the natural environment side, like the U.S. Geological Survey. They have data going back to the 1870s, 1880s that they've digitized. It's become really valuable. Those long monitoring stations become the most valuable data sets.
Yeah. Well, over the past 3 to 5 years, I'm kind of that's been the time that I've been with the
Yeah.
industry. So I've kind of seen only this part of smart water. How has smart water evolved over the years, and especially in the past 3 to 5, where it seems like the intensity of the messaging has really exploded and grown?
Yeah, I think that's exactly it. I think there's been a combination of a few things that have sort of really lit a fire under it. One is low cost sensors or IoT. So those are certainly exploding in all markets, and including water now. There's a pretty much an exponential rate of installation. And then with the big data analytics and processing power opening up and artificial intelligence, some of those platforms that were largely developed for other markets are now more ubiquitous and can be used in water. So I think that change is really a lot of technology is driven in other markets is now coming into water. Another trend we've seen is this concept of digital twins.
Hmm.
So again, this is used in other markets, but you're trying to get a a digital representation of your entire sort of watershed or in your utility. And so you've got your physical assets, your pumping stations, your treatment systems, and you use digital technologies to try and forecast what's going to happen before it happens, so you can be more proactive. We've also seen a move to more open data and open collaboration. So utilities are joining groups like the Swan Smart Water Network, and working together, sharing insights on what they're learning, also kind of getting together and evaluating vendors. So there's a lot of collaboration, on top of this technology that's rapidly evolving or exponentially evolving.
Yeah. Well, there's two things that I wanted to touch on from that you talked about. One is the digital twin. So I'd like to touch on that just from a definition standpoint. Could you like give a brief definition of what a digital twin is? And then the other is talking about that coordination between utilities. I've also heard of it being between the different verticals within a utility itself. So like the roads department will now talk to the stormwater department that now talks to the water department, and how they all can coalesce their data in a really unique way.
Yeah, that's right. That's exactly it. Yeah, so a digital twin That's where we really use, computing power, data sources from across an organization. So you can have, like you said, multiple departments. You can have your IoT, your OT department, your AMI meters we talked about at the beginning a little bit, SCADA systems, customer information management, GIS, bringing all this information together, and external data sources too, like weather data and river and groundwater data that might be collected by federal or state agencies. So, and then the third part of that is you can augment it with machine learning or artificial intelligence. That combination, again, is like you're bringing all the data together, trying to understand the system, and then proactively determine, what you think is going to happen, and then you can be more proactive rather than reactive.
Gotcha. Yeah. Well, and then just talking about that vertical alignment of things within a utility itself, you also have the idea of one water and connecting different water departments and different wastewater departments. And it sounds like that seems to be what these smart water networks are getting at, is how do we all connect to each other in this unique way?
Yeah, exactly. So it's a more holistic approach. You're looking at water really as it has value for the environment, for obviously people, for industry. It's got the economic value. So considering all of that, but really look through the whole water cycle from raindrop through people, through farms, animals, through industry, back into the receiving environment, and then that's upstream to someone else or another group or user. And so this whole cycle of water gets recycled and reused naturally. And so that's definitely part of the one water platform. And then having partnerships, like you said, for sharing data between organizations and even with departments, which it's been very hard for many of these utilities. They often work on their own operations. If it's the transportation group, they're less concerned about the drinking water side, so if they can come together and share assets like communications and data management systems, you have tremendous value.
Yeah, yeah. So when it comes to the adoption side of things, what are some of the traditional barriers that are run into for utilities when it comes to trying to adopt these new technologies? You did
Yeah,
mention that sensors are kind of falling in price, and that's helped out a lot, but what are some of the barriers that are still there?
yeah, I think it's a few. I think the largest ones, in my view, are really the sort of political silos more than the technology silos. There's a lot of, like we talked about, different departments and sharing that data. It really is a drive of a change in culture.
Mhm.
It's not a way that a lot of these utilities or the water segments really operated in the past. So there is a greater movement now to cooperation and sharing, but that still is a barrier. Some other ones would be just like I said, it's a pretty complicated landscape as far as the technologies and utilities, and the water market in general. There's not a lot of appetite for doing a lot of trial and error. They simply don't have excess budgets, and so they streamlining that assessment of technologies and procurement is really important. So that's where you're seeing utilities getting together, municipalities, and working with other ones in the county or in the state or in the province, and trying to have a more efficient process for evaluating technology and sharing best practices.
Yeah, yeah. That political thing I have heard at several conferences where it's just some people are too scared, or they had one run in and it didn't work the way that they wanted it to work, and they just were like never again kind of thing. There's kind of, it's almost grudge like in a way for some utilities that don't want to adopt. So I totally understand that political thing that you're mentioning there.
Yeah, I mean, change is hard for any organizations, and particular ones that have been working largely the same way for 100 years. Change is very hard, but I think we are
Mhm.
on the verge of pretty rapid change in the water industry.
Yeah, well, and speaking of rapid change, I mean, with this coronavirus, I've heard that there's been kind of a rapid adoption of some of these smart technologies. It seems that investment in them is more important now than ever because you can more easily social distance and like a lot of that stuff. Could you talk a little bit about how what that impact is right now and what you're seeing?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing it really compressed time. So what we were anticipating was going to take years, at an accelerated rate from past rates, but really it was going to take years. We're seeing that rapidly compressed. So we've got customers like Welsh Water in the UK that they've been able to go relatively uninterrupted. 80% of their workforce can work remotely from home. Whereas other utilities that aren't quite as far along in their digital journey, they're in a very tough spot, right? It might be 10, 15% of the utility. So, I've seen more of that. So we've seen that in our own, market segments and our customer base, a real acceleration over the last 2 months, to using cloud, to moving to software more quickly. So it's, for us actually, during this pandemic, it hasn't slowed things down at all. It's actually, we've accelerated. We're very busy right now, helping customers try and work remotely and more efficiently and leverage technology. So I think that's maybe one of the silver linings in the pandemic, is that there will be this, I think, drive for utilities to modernize more quickly. So that's hopefully going to be one outcome. We're seeing that right now.
Yeah, well, and you're not the only one that I've heard say that. So it seems pretty common that a lot of utilities are like, yeah, we're looking at remote monitoring now because it helps us a lot. And the advantages of all those systems still stay with you afterward too. It's not it's only good now thing. It's a process change that is good for the future too.
Yeah, exactly. If you look at some of the issues in the water market, like sewer overflows, where there's trillions of gallons overflowing, every year in U.S. and Canada, adding smart sensors, having a smart sewer shed will allow you to really proactively get out and do maintenance and fix problems before you have those overflows. I think the US EPA estimates that about 80% of those overflows, and there's thousands of them every year, could be prevented with just improved operations. And that the technology allows you to do that much more efficiently.
Yeah. Well, to close out, why don't we talk a little bit about kind of the future? Where do you see smart water headed? I've obviously drinking water has been a big major push for that, especially early on with the metering side of things. But I've also been hearing more about interest in smart water or smart wastewater rather. So what do you see as the future for smart water and smart wastewater in general?
Yeah, I mean, again, with the sort of similar to the pandemic, we're seeing an acceleration there. I think this will sort of kick it off, but yeah, in particular on the smart sewer sheds, we're seeing that move very quickly. A lot of interest. We've got more than 1,000 utilities as customers, and we've got a lot of interest from those in learning how they can, add sensors, instruments in, how to optimize pumping so that if a big storm does hit under a changing climate regime, they're more resilient. They can maybe move the flow around to a different part of the city where they got more capacity. They can optimize their energy use for pumping. So definitely seeing more of that. And a lot of this is driven by, tapping into those data silos. So connecting the different data sets, bringing them together, having a digital twin, I think will be a really important part of it. And then, on top of that digital twin as part of it, building algorithms using artificial intelligence, machine learning to predict what's going to happen and get really prescriptive. So you're, instead of doing a sort of a planned, maintenance schedule you do every week, hitting these different things based on just the way your organization does it for decades, be more likely driven by, data. So totally data driven, get up in the morning, head to work, and you've got a list based on what's changed in the last 24 hours, the climate that's coming, where assets might be failing. You're directed to those areas to try and do some advanced work. And so it's really prescriptive. Get out there before you do get the sewer beds.
Yeah. You kind of cut out there at the end, but we got the gist of it.
Oh, okay.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time and chatting with us, and it'd be great to chat with you more further down the line. Hopefully there will be a live event that we can see each other at sometime
Yeah.
soon.